Do you suspect you might be emotionally unavailable, like you feel disconnected in your relationships and you don't really know who you are, or you tend to lose your identity in relationships? You're always chasing love, you need to validate yourself externally, you don't have that internal sense of self, and you don't feel whole alone. These patterns in relationships where you keep attracting emotionally unavailable men and you struggle to leave because you have a deep fear of being alone, they are all strong signs that you are emotionally unavailable and that this video is for you. So I'm going to firstly define what emotional unavailability is, and then we're going to go through the 10 signs that you might be emotionally unavailable, and make sure you stick around to the end because I will go through the steps to show you how to start healing so that you can become emotionally available. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Amy and I help women who are sick of falling for unavailable men to break the cycle of toxic romantic relationships by healing their core wounding underneath so that they can be happy alone until they attract a healthy partner. And if you'd like more content on this topic, please do click the subscribe button, hit the bell notification so you get the bell when I post a new lesson every week. Before I begin, Heal Your Heart School is open for enrollment, so if you'd like to know more about how to work with me, make sure you stick around till the end of this lesson. So let's dive into what is emotional unavailability. The actual term means that you are unavailable to your emotional experience and you are detached from parts of yourself. So you have a superficial connection to yourself, you have a surface level understanding of your emotional world, but you're unavailable for whatever reason, which I will unpack, to connect more deeply to your emotional experience, to how you feel about yourself, your identity, and the world. And all that's available in your awareness is either this kind of like monochrome emotional experience or really big, strong emotions. So you might be just kind of like holding it in, going about day to day, and then all of a sudden you have this massive emotional surge because you just aren't aware of the more complex nature of your emotional world. You are cut off from it. It's kind of like the difference between seeing a black and white film as opposed to seeing a film in all of the colors of the rainbow, right? When it's just black and white, you see the really strong shapes and then you see the lighter shapes. But when you're watching a film in color, you really have this richness of understanding of what you're seeing and all of the nuances around it. That's how you experience your emotional world when you're unavailable. It's more black and white. And when you open yourself up to be available to your emotional experience so that you can connect healthily and intimately with others, it's kind of like you get to feel your internal emotional world in all of the colors of the rainbow. So as I said, your awareness of yourself is limited for a reason, and that reason is that there is a trauma response going on. And you might think, well, trauma, I don't have any of that, I have fine life, there's been no trauma in my life. But I'm going to redefine what that actually means for you so that you can understand that there is a reason you are cut off from your emotional world, and you haven't matured into the ability to hold a space for your bigger emotions and your more complex emotions. And I'm going to show you how to do that at the very end. But it kind of feels like at the moment you're keeping a lid on something deeper, something more painful, like you can't bear to look at it. You want to hide your real self away and you're afraid of other people finding out who you actually are. And there's a deep fear that you're the problem, which is why you're watching this video. You suspect it might actually be you. And there is a deeper fear that you won't actually like yourself, what's underneath it. So you're kind of holding this together. So I want to kind of caveat this so that you understand that there are attachment origins as to why this is going on for you. So if there was any kind of neglect that you experienced in your childhood, or if you've had a series of traumatic relationships in your adulthood where you've experienced this kind of inconsistency and lack of predictability, and when you were a child your parents were emotionally unavailable, or there was this kind of like roller coaster of what was going on in the dynamic of the childhood home, you will generally believe that what's going on out there is your fault, right? You can't count on the humans around you. Humans are not safe. So you're kind of living in a constant state of distrust, and you live with a fear of abandonment as a child, a fear that your parents are going to, because they're so inconsistently, they're just going to kind of disconnect from you and stop loving you. Now, love and connection is a primal survival need for children, and subconsciously this is going on. You won't be aware of it. I had a happy, loving home. I wasn't aware of it as well, but my needs for emotional connection weren't being met enough consistently in the family home. So as a result, you just don't feel you can safely relax into your body, trust in your environment, that your parents will always be there for you. And that's when you experience this kind of roller coaster where you just don't know what's going to go on next. And in order to survive your fear of abandonment in that environment, you actually ironically abandon yourself in order to prepare to not be abandoned by the people around you. The people around you and the connections externally become more important than your connection to yourself. So for example, you might think, well, I need to fawn over this parent, or I need to suppress my needs, or I need to be hyper vigilant so that they don't leave, and I need to be in this kind of state of pursuit. And it actually gets embedded into your nervous system, into your autonomic responses, and this might actually become quite a normal part of your personality, or what you perceive to be normal, i.e. you've been living with it your whole life, but you're actually in this kind of low level state of fight, flight, anxiety, hypervigilance, or fawn. And above all, this kind of trauma response disconnects you from yourself. Yourself is less important than the connection that you are trying to get externally. So when you're in your childhood, it was with your parents. In your adulthood, this is the relationship with your primary attachment figure, or whoever it is that you are connected with right now. So you detach from yourself and you become unavailable to yourself, to your own internal emotional world, in order to be safe. So this was a safety response when you're in your childhood. It kept you safe. It allowed you to develop and grow up and mature to a degree. But when you carry through emotional unavailability into your adulthood, which comes with this kind of insecure attachment, which 50% of the population generally have, it means that you live in your adulthood with this chronic lifelong trauma response. You don't kind of heal it and you don't mature out of it. So you have this low level, very subtle energy going on that is ingrained into your personality. And if you've heard of the term CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, this is where you had this really low-level unavailability in your childhood and low-level trauma that was kind of like eating away and chipping away at you. You might have had some capital T trauma as well. This low-level trauma is causing this response and this reflex in the body that's very subtle, and you think that it's normal, but it actually causes you to feel disconnected in your relationships, and you lose yourself easily in new relationships. You feel like you have lost your identity, or you don't quite know who you are. Something just feels really off. You don't really know yourself, and you know that your pattern is chasing external validation, chasing external connection, over focusing on and valuing your connection to yourself, your self-value and your self-worth. So you don't bring your full self into new relationships because there's this part of you that deeply fears there's something wrong or broken about you, because you internalized and personalized the chaos that was going on in your earliest relationships. You thought it was all about you. So in your adult relationship, you're deeply afraid that, you know, you're going to screw it up again, and there's going to be all of these awful family dynamics going on in your relationship. So in that relationship, your sense of self doesn't get a chance to grow, because that mirror of relationship is so important for us to mature into our identity. And we're trying to kind of control how we're perceived. And we still believe on some level that our current partner or whoever we're dating is going to abandon or leave us. And so we act from there. And ironically, because we have that energy within us, we do attract others that are emotionally unavailable. They might have different symptoms. They might be more of the kind of island or avoidant types, if you're more of the anxious type, however the dynamic kind of fits in for you. But it's the same stick, just a different end of emotional unavailability, where when you attract those types of people, it allows you to have that space and to be safe and to not actually be fully known, heard and seen. So we tend to then have these relationships where we kind of only show a part of who we are that actually keeps us safe. So let's dive into the signs of emotional unavailability in you. And I just want to caveat this with, these are if you show these in a compulsive way or an excessive way, because if you just do this every now and then, you know, it's kind of like a natural response actually, but there's a point at which it becomes out of balance and it becomes quite a big portion of your personality. So sign number one is that you keep choosing unavailable partners. So if you look back on all your relationship history, it looks like the person's available at the start, things are going really well, and then all of a sudden they pull back, they might ghost you, you know, they might change their mind, or they get really ambivalent about it. And this, you just seem to keep attracting these same types of people. You're recreating the same dynamic and pattern that you had in childhood. And this is going on completely subconsciously, right? You won't actually know that you're doing that. Your filter is subconscious when you are dating. But if you were to consciously look back at all the relationships you've had, that is one of the main recurring themes. So I want you to look at the recurring themes in there. How did it end? What were the similarities between the partners? And you'll get this kind of an idea of what you're subconsciously drawn to, what's going on outside of your awareness. And when you are dating, when you are discerning, please slow down, pace yourself. Don't let yourself be love bombed or swept away in something that starts really fast. You know, it's just going to crash and burn at the end, because real, true, authentic love just takes so much time to develop. We need to be in it for the long term. Sign number 2 is that you have an excessive need to escape into fantasy, and you actually enjoy spending a lot of time in that space. And I'm not talking about just enjoying video games or whatever. You know, there's a lot of fun and enjoyment in that in a healthy amount. But if you find yourself compulsively disassociating into daydreaming, this is a maladaptive tendency we have, where we go somewhere else and we live somewhere else in our body, in our nervous system and our mind. And there's a reason for this, because what's actually going on in our body and in our mind is intolerable, and we've actually got to do this in order to survive. This was a survival instinct from childhood, because the family home was incredibly difficult to be in, and even the smallest dynamic that's uncomfortable can be incredibly challenging for a child, because a child's nervous system is just developing. Children don't have the internal resources to deal with most of the issues and dynamics that they do actually have to deal with, and so the maladaptation of disassociating and disconnecting is actually a really common way that children deal with this. Now, normally you would mature out of this and come into reality, come into your body, but if you notice yourself in adulthood, you do this. This is a way that you are avoiding or escaping yourself, and a way that you are not available to connect with your actual experience. So you might be even in a pattern where you are acting out entire parts of your life in your mind that you're not actually letting yourself do in your body, and you're creating this whole other world for yourself that just isn't grounded in reality. So catch yourself when you're in this kind of fantasy escaping, and ground yourself, get back into reality, do as much as you can to tolerate what your actual experience is going on in your body and your mind in your life now. Sign number 3 that you might be emotionally unavailable is that you have trust issues that are significantly affecting your relationships, how you're acting in relationships, how much of yourself you're showing. So if you have a tendency to distrust people a lot, right, you actually find it really hard to trust people. There's a chance that you believe that no one's actually going to be fully there for you. And the truth, I know, is that we are walking alone our whole lives, and we do need to really rely on ourselves. So you are alone, and you can't ever be assured that no one's ever going to hurt you or lie to you. But if we don't allow ourselves to incrementally open up and trust in relationships, we don't get the benefit of having that kind of connection and allowing ourselves to feel held by other people, because there is a lot of healing possibility in the connection with others. Now, I'm not asking you to walk into every situation and just automatically trust people. We do need to be discerning with our trust, but we just don't want to fear the worst in every situation. Say if you're creating a new friend, or if you're going on a date, you might have one sense that, yeah, this might not work out, but you have another sense that, yeah, there is a possibility that this is kind of like healthy internal balance. You're not like in fear mode and just projecting that nothing is going to work. Now, of course, like I said, we can't ever, bulletproof our life, where people we love, they are going to let us down, they are going to hurt us. But where trust comes from is actually knowing and trusting that we can handle the situation appropriately, right? We're not going to self-abandon to stay connected with this person that keeps hurting us again and again and again. No, we're going to hold appropriate boundaries and deal with it appropriately. And when we know we can trust in ourselves, that's when trust can be formed with others around us. Sign number 4 is that you notice you're in either a hyper aroused or a shut down state a lot of the time. So you either are really activated and there's lots of like anxiety and go, and you might be focused on busy work, or you just are so shut down you spend hours and hours in front of the Netflix or reading books, and you just struggle with going out, and your body and your nervous system is really kind of in this shut down state. When you have this compulsive self-dysregulation, which both hyperactivation and being shut down is a type of dysregulation, you're focused on survival and your emotions are kind of like out of control, right? You just can't deal with these spot fires that are happening everywhere. You don't know how to calm and regulate your nervous system. When you're in shutdown, you are in a depressive state. You don't have a regulated nervous system either, and there are a lot of negative beliefs going on. There are this feeling that we can't kind of function normally and we can't show up normally. So that's at which you need to start looking at self-soothing techniques and ways to work with your nervous system to get yourself back into a regulated state and really reset your baseline. Sign number 5, which is kind of linked to sign number 4, is that you notice you need to numb a lot. You have this kind of compulsive need to numb through distracting yourself with your phone or eating more than you should, or any kind of addictive behavior, because it's so painful kind of to be actually in your state now, whether it's work or relationship or just life. You really need to kind of numb those effects, and you might not even be aware that you're numbing in order to get out of that pain, because that pain, it's just like that pan of water that you put the frog in and you very slowly turn the heat up and it gets hotter and hotter and hotter, and the frog just tolerates and put up with it because it's happened over such a slow period of time. So you're needing to numb in order to get out of that painful state. And this originates from not being able to be in your own skin comfortably when you were a child. You didn't know how to calm yourself, you didn't know how to relax because the caregivers around you weren't able to offer that companionship and that co-regulation with you, because they were the ones that were kind of causing this chaos or causing this kind of state where you weren't able to be yourself. So you haven't learned the self-regulatory skills in order to do that, and you just can't turn down the volume inside of what's going on inside in your emotional world. You can't stand the sound of quiet even, so you've got to have the radio going on all the time so that you can just not have to deal with any emotions underneath, like loneliness. So these are ways we disconnect from the self and the ways that we are unavailable to our own emotional experience by just kind of numbing and distracting them. Now, these are all patterns of self-abandonment, and if you want a comprehensive resource on how to stop self-abandoning through the discipline of self-love, I have a complete guide to healing self-abandonment in the link below. You can click that and go through that. There is an incredibly comprehensive 60-day self-love plan that if you notice you're in any of these kind of like numbing patterns or any of these dissociative behaviors, that 60-day plan is going to really help you to get out of that. So click the link below to download it. Sign number 6, you might be emotionally unavailable, is that you never feel enough. You have compulsive shame when you're in relationships. This is a pattern of yours that if you look back at all the relationships you've ever had, there's this feeling that you are never enough. And of course, this originates from childhood. We personalized what was going on in the family home. We made it about us. We shamed ourselves for what was going on because we thought it was ourselves. And so we recreate the dynamics of our family of origin unit in our adult relationships, where again, we attract people where we never feel enough. So this kind of compulsive shame comes with a really strong inner critic, and it's really important to get clear on these internal parts within you and to do boundary work and to set boundaries of the internal voices you allow to actually speak to you, because compulsive shame is incredibly debilitating. Sign number 7 that you might be emotionally unavailable is that you always find yourself in a caretaker, fixer, or rescuer role in relationships, right? You attract project partners. So this is kind of a compulsive thing where you actually feel actualized in the relationship when you are caretaking, when you have a role. It feels like you are justified to be in the relationship and to receive that love, okay? And obviously people pleasing and fawning, these patterns, they originate from the role that you would have taken on in the family of origin unit or in your earliest relationships that naturally allowed you to stay connected to your caregivers in the face of this kind of chaos. And often if those caregivers were emotionally unavailable themselves or emotionally immature, you kind of stepped in to parent your parents in a really inappropriate way. This also protects us against this fear of abandonment. So if I look after you, if I become indispensable to you, you won't abandon me, right? If I take on your needs, I get rewarded through that connection. So there's this real symbiotic nature to caretaker relationships. And if you want to know more about that pattern and how to heal that, I have a complete video on that right here. Sign number 8, you might be emotionally unavailable, is that you are hypervigilant in your life. You are always on alert. You're always scanning for potential danger, for a potential sign that something's going to go wrong. You might see your ex or someone's going to say something that will hurt you. And this again comes from your childhood where it paid off to be hypervigilant, right? You had to be on alert for any changes, subtle changes in dynamics, so that you could do what you needed to do in order to keep the connection in and to make it feel as if everything's okay. And you learn to always exist in this state, and you might have chronic issues because of this, right? Chronic anxiety in your life can cause incredible pain and illnesses, and this might be just a natural state in your entire life where it's become an ingrained part of your personality. Sign number 9 that you might be emotionally unavailable is that you are hyper independent. So there's this compulsive self-reliance. You struggle to get help from anyone, right? I can do it all myself, because you've always had to show up for yourself, and you can't ever trust and rely on other people, but you're actually blocking others from helping you, because it actually on a deeper level doesn't feel safe to let in help from others. You have to be in control here. It's really scary to ask for help, and if you lose control and can't do it yourself, it has really significant ramifications for who you are in relationship and who you are on your own. Sign number 10 you might be emotionally unavailable is if you have significant perfectionism in your life. And like I said, the caveats there, a bit of perfectionism is completely normal amongst all of us. But if you notice you have compulsive perfectionism, there's this part of you that thinks, if I get it right this time, I'm not going to be abandoned, right? It comes from that old core wound, that core abandonment wound from your childhood, where you were so afraid of being abandoned. This is when you're 2, 3, 4 years of age. So you think, right, I've got to get it right. It's got to be perfect so I'm not left, so my connection to love doesn't get left. And this is where our inner critic can really step in. It pops up and gets in front of everything. You need to be perfect in order to be loved. So all of your inner critic internal monologue is actually trying to help you to get connection and to feel safe and to not feel abandoned. But obviously it's morphed into something a lot bigger and a lot larger, and control pops up in all sorts of ways in our adult life when we struggle with an abandonment wound. And as you know, there is no such thing as perfectionism. We're never actually going to get it perfectly right. So you're always going to be failing yourself, and that failing yourself feeds into the compulsive shame I mentioned earlier. And then you over focus on the bad, and you actually get wired for the negative of what's going on. And you self-abandon every time you do this because you don't give yourself the love and compassion you deserve. Now, if you want to know more about that abandonment wound and what it does, how it operates, and how to actually start healing it, I have a complete video on that here. So how do we actually become emotionally unavailable? If you notice you have one or a few or maybe all of these signs above, it is possible to turn this around and to turn your internal world around so that you can start to have healthy intimacy within yourself and with others. The first thing you need to get really clear on is that this is a trauma response, and we need to separate our trauma self from our true self. This is going to be challenging because our trauma self may have become an embedded part of our personality. It may actually have been with us our whole life. And so there's this other part of us, our true self, our secure self that knows joy, knows love, and that part of us is quite kind of small and quiet, and we don't pay a lot of attention to it. So we need to create a comprehensive list of all the patterns that we do that we know from the signs that I've mentioned previously around perfectionism, caretaking, attracting emotionally unavailable people, numbing, hyper independence. Write a complete audit of what you do. Get clear on your trauma self as it is separate from your true self, okay? So don't get kind of swept up in this thing that this is your identity. No, we are going to separate that out. Have self-compassion in this process, in this acknowledgement, because these patterns kept you safe when you were younger, right? They allowed you to be where you are today. And because you learned this behavior in childhood or wherever you learned it from, it can be unlearned. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. Because you learned these behaviors, because you learned to be emotionally unavailable, you can unlearn those behaviors and become emotionally available. I'm a testament to it. That's what I teach my clients in Heal Your Heart School. And these are the processes to do that. So once you've gotten clear on what your trauma self is doing, how it's operating using all those signs I mentioned, I want you to write a list of your true self behaviors, beliefs, and loves, okay? And some of these might feel a bit weird to fit on because you don't actually believe them, like I am worthy just as I am. So maybe start with concrete things like times in your life where you felt really expanded, you felt really lit up, like you were in flow. Things that just bring you joy and love when you just exist, right? You don't have to be a certain way or do a certain thing or try and control an outcome. You can just be and experience a lot of love. I want you to think of it like this beautiful metaphor from a teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, who says, we are the blue sky behind the clouds. The clouds that come and go are our thoughts or our trauma responses, but your true self, is always present in the blue sky. And sometimes those clouds can really cloud up our whole world. We don't see the blue sky above it at all, but we can clear those clouds, we can thin them out and start to see our true self underneath. Clearing will happen over time. Don't be defined by your trauma, but start to really drop into the aspects of you that aren't your trauma self, that where you feel really authentic and really grounded in who you are. Then you need to learn how to reconnect to your emotional experience, because all of these traumas, of course, have disconnected us from our emotional world, because we didn't have the inner resources to be able to process them when we were children. Guess what? We're now adults. We do actually have the internal resources to process them. It might not feel like we have, because we're not used to actually holding a space for our emotions. And there's this concept of window of tolerance, where at the moment your window might be quite small in what you are able to tolerate. So go slowly with your ability to process your emotional world and recognize it. So start by identifying the language of the emotions you experience. Language is so powerful when it comes to reversing trauma responses. They say name it to tame it. So print out a list of all of the emotions that you might possibly be experiencing, put it up on a wall where you look at it every day, and start to identify the nuances of your emotions. So look at one big chunk of those emotions and think, okay, well, when have I last felt that? Or where am I feeling today on this scale? Because like I said earlier in the video, at the moment it's black and white. It's either kind of like this white, nothing's really going on, and then these massive, huge, big emotions. We want to start recognizing the quality and the gradation of the colors in between, so that we can really get a handle on what's going on emotionally. Now, I love Brene Brown. There's a beautiful book called Atlas of the Heart, and I think it's also a show. I would suggest you drop into that, because she talks about this whole rainbow of emotions in a really beautiful way, and it's backed by science. It's a very excellent resource. So once you've got some language around it, I want you to start to write regularly in a journal what your emotional experience actually is, what's going on day to day, and you might start to rate your day, right? Day to day, and notice that days change. Some days you are in this space, some days you're in that space, and it's not always the same. Get intimate and vulnerable with yourself, and really get into some tough love with regarding to your patterns. So if you are in a situationship, or if you're in something ambivalent, you need to cut that off. That is not going to work for you ever. And I have videos on my channel about how to do that. Please don't date out of loneliness to avoid your emotion. Getting comfortable and getting intimate with your emotional experience is going to give you so many gifts in your life. So notice when you go into fantasy and numbing to distract yourself, and I'm not saying to go cold turkey on those kinds of things, because I still do them, but to a balanced level, it's okay. So if you have hours and hours and hours of Netflix, just start to reduce it, start to do some of the other things, so that you can start to reconnect yourself to your emotional world. Your inner critic is going to be strong here, because when we feel vulnerable, that's when our inner critic speaks up the most. It goes into that kind of self-shaming pattern. That's when we need to be really aware of our inner critic and the words that it says, and to not identify it with it. So when your inner critic speaks up, I ask my clients to always write them down on a piece of paper. Get them external, so you can see that they are the words and beliefs of my inner critic. That is not me. I'm the blue sky behind all of that. And I must be feeling particularly vulnerable right now, because this is a really loud part of me. What's going on in my life? That's why I'm feeling vulnerable. This is going to change. It's not a permanent situation. So that gets us into a state of, okay, things aren't going to be bad forever. We can move through this, and we can tolerate this pain a little bit more easily. Then, because relationships and vulnerability and emotional availability are really forged in relationship, there's only so much we can do on our own. You need to connect vulnerably with others. You need to start becoming emotionally available to others. And this looks like actually starting to open up to others about what's going on for you underneath the superficial surface of, oh, I'm doing work today, and all of those kind of like superficial small talk things we say. We need to start to open up our relationships. So find safe relationships to practice with first. Don't just start opening up to anyone. Again, we need to have discernment when it comes to emotional availability. We need to choose who we're going to test on, and start to open up to them a bit. Start to express your experience, whether it's good or bad. And if it's a bad experience or if it's a difficult thing to talk about, that is going to allow you to really build your muscles of emotional availability. Because if we're only talking about good things all the time, again, that becomes a bit of a mask that we can hide behind. So choose something that you're struggling with this week. Book a coffee date with a friend or hire a coach or a therapist and just open up about what is difficult, what you're struggling with that person. And do you know what? The only way we can become emotionally available is to actually take a chance in our relationships, right? We can have the most perfect friend on the other end, which there's no such thing as perfect, but they will be there and open for us, but they can't get us to be emotionally available. They can't pull it out of us. You might have a super duper friend who tries to, but they're as rare as hen's teeth. It takes you, and it takes you taking a chance to open up and hope that they can hold a safe space for you. So that's why I urge you to be really discerning about who you do this with and allow others to make mistakes as well. Not everyone is going to respond the way you expect them to, and expectations when you open up can be really dangerous, right? So just check on what your expectations are. That you might be thinking, oh, they've got to respond in this way if I say this thing. No. That person is their whole own sovereign self. They're going to respond the way that they're going to respond. You're the one that's opening up, and then allow a space for them to be human and to respond in their own way as well. So I've given you some starter tips on how to become emotionally available, but I urge you to watch my masterclass I'm hosting on the proven 3 steps to self-love after a toxic relationship ends, because this goes into the nitty-gritty of Heal Your Heart School and all the abandonment wound healing work that I do. You can click the link below to join me in that masterclass there. I also have a free Facebook group, so click the link to join. I do lives almost every week, and I'd love to interact with you one-on-one there as well. And if you found this video helpful, I'd be really keen to hear your opinion in the comments. Let me know what signs you're seeing in yourself, what you're doing. I would really love to hear from you. And if you'd like to submit your application for Heal Your Heart School, there is a link to my calendar below, so just click there, book a call with me and my team, and I look forward to talking to you then. And for now, here are some next step videos for you to watch so you can move one step closer to having an incredible, intimate, authentic relationship with yourself, becoming emotionally available to yourself, and having healthy relationships to others. And for now, I will see you in the next video.